Want your brand to be seen and be remembered? Effective campaigns need both. JCDecaux's high-quality billboard sites in premium locations nationwide offer brands powerful and visible stages for emotive, impactful and influential storytelling. Find out how JCDecaux can help your brand be seen and be remembered at www.beseenberemembered.co.nz. No mai hoki mai ki other folds, e mihi nei ko Duncan Grieve tōku ingoa. My guest today is Neil Finn. I don't need to explain who he is, but I will. A core member of Split Enz and the frontman of Crowded House are two of the most important bands to have emerged from this country. He's considered by many to be one of the greatest songwriters in the world, and some really smart people think that he's the best to ever do it. He's undeniably just a kind of old generational, once in a century kind of talent there. But that's, on a global level, there's a bunch of really amazing people in music. But one of the things I love about him is that he's extremely public spirited and community oriented. Like a lot of people get rich and they sit in their castles on the hill, they have a nice time, all power to them. But he behaves differently with his fame and what it's brought him. So he built Roundhead Studio into this place which provides a world-class recording facility to artists who would otherwise be unlikely to be able to get anywhere near one. He gets people together to do things and has done for decades. Seven Worlds Collide, which got the likes of Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder and the Smiths' Johnny Marr into a show and an album to support Oxfam. But he's doing it again with MUFGAL, Make Us Feel Good About Life, which starts tonight as we release this, streaming through his Infinity Sessions platform on YouTube. If you go to the spin-off, you'll be able to see the lineup. It's an amazing 2-week extravaganza of local music at a time when it does feel like we really need something good in this country. And I guess the thing about Neil is that a personality like that who loves the idea of music as this connector and a place where people can get together is naturally going to love the idea of the internet, the original founding ideas of the internet. It's kind of hard to remember now when it feels so dominated by a handful of mega platforms. But those who went online in the 90s and the early 2000s truly believed that the internet would be a utopian place for culture. Neil Finn put on a live stream when we were still accessing the web through dial-up, and he's never really stopped trying to make interesting things happen online, with projects like Fang Radio and his recently launched community private universe. There's just this kind of sense of wanting to be creative and build his own institutions in the space that feels very connected to those early ideals of what the internet would be. And so I wanted to get together with him and talk to him about the internet, about how it started, about how his views of it have evolved. We talk about things like social media. He used to be a very prolific and sometimes very funny tweeter and has largely gone away from that. And why he has continued to build these moments, these communities, these different ways of thinking about the way that music and the internet can coexist, despite all the incentives to just kind of throw up your arms and say that the platforms have captured it. He continues to fight the good fight. So I've been wanting to have this conversation with Neil for a long time. I was really, really stoked with how it came out. Neil Finn on the Fold. Tēnā koe, Neil Finn, welcome to the Fold.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I want to start with what's happening next week. You've got this acronym MUFGAL.
Yeah.
Make Us Feel Good About Life. The title feels like it's explaining what it intends to do, but I wonder if you could kind of unpack its origins and maybe why MUFGAL?
Well, it started as a kind of a joke. I was trying to find it. My dad was really into anagrams, and he always used to. He had like a IOG was one of his. It's only a game, because he'd watch cricket, and if it wasn't going well, it's only a game. Or MTIOG, which was more than a game. What's that? MTAG, MTAG, if he was really enjoying the game. And so I just always had my mind tuned to it. So yeah, MUFGAL came out of that thought. And it was actually originally MUFGAL INS, meaning make us feel good about life in New Zealand. Because I sensed there was a mood of kind of slight languishing during the winter, which often happens, I think. In the middle of winter, you start to feel like there's a sense, this mood in the community of kind of, oh God, and there's always things to look at, whether they're on the news or around you with the health system, all the things that sort of are very troubling and uneasy. And so it started to sound like a really good motto, one that might become a hashtag or something in modern times, MUFGAL. And I explained it in my initial letter to people that I was asking if they wanted to be part of, some of the artists that I really admire around town, and called it MUFGAL, and they all really liked it somehow, and it seemed to summarise what we're supposed to be doing, making everybody feel good about life. Hopefully, that's what we aim for.
I have no doubt that that's going to happen, given the lineup you've assembled. You were also talking off air about the fact that you're fairly confident that there'll be a "what have I done here" moment, which, looking at how elaborate the Infinity sessions and these things that you build are, must be a semi-frequent moment that strikes you.
Yeah.
What is it that you're driving towards with giving yourself all this work, making these kind of beautiful, fragile, very specific things come together?
I just have an internal compulsion to to think of an idea and then double it, just kind of trying to get the best possible outcome. And it actually has worked out to be really brilliant, but there's often a moment in the execution of these ideas where I go, oh, this was there's no way we can pull this off. With the last big Infinity session we did, which you guys were, helping us to tell people about, which was great. I had a moment an hour and a half before we were going to go to air where there was 7 orchestra pieces to rehearse, and we just didn't have time to do them all. So we were facing the possibility of playing these arrangements nobody had heard or played before on a live stream, and I just had a real panic. Victoria Kelly came down with me. I think she was having a panic as well. But amazingly, and it always seems to be the case, we did the show, and just with that little bit of adrenaline, and it just always goes without any grief whatsoever. So I'm hoping that this series of shows we're doing next week will be like that. I don't have responsibility for all the performances, which is great. It's a one-stage, one act at a time thing. And I'm going to be part of, and I'm playing piano with a few people. I'm definitely getting involved with it. But I don't think it'll be a really high-stress situation. You can remind me of that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You spoke just then about the last session, which I attended, and I think the thing that sort of surprised me about it on the day was it's almost like you're trying to make it difficult. Not just the number of different performers involved, but also the number of different, like you had Rob Brydon kind of beaming in for some reason. You had 2 dueling MCs kind of quite competitively trying to figure out what was going on, sometimes helping or hindering, and it felt like it was teetering on the edge of transcendence and chaos at all times, which was clearly a very deliberate thing. And I guess I was curious about like that it feels like it contains some of what we imagined the internet might become, this place where sort of anything could happen.
Yeah, well, you've hit the nail on the head there, really, because I always saw the potential. I thought I saw potential in the internet in 2001 when it was just getting going, and I did my first live stream from a basement in Parnell, and there was only like maybe 20 people watching. In fact, I think there was a limit to how many people could.
It's amazing to think that even got that many, given the quality of the internet back then.
I know.
Trying to live stream over dial-up kind of thing.
Well, we had a guy who was a real enthusiast, Fergie, and he bought a server in on the back of a truck, basically. It was huge. It'd be a chip now, probably, what we had to bring in. But I just got absolutely taken with the idea of being able to not have a gatekeeper, feel like there's no gatekeeper, no production crew, no sort of established TV brand behind it, and that the artist was being able to play directly for an audience no matter where they were. We had a guy in Sweden on the first occasion who we had people emailing in so we could communicate with them, and this guy emailed in, I'm in the music conservatory in Stockholm at 3 a.m. and it's snowing outside and I'm loving this. I went, oh yeah, that's really cool. And there was another guy on top of a volcano in Hawaii that emailed in as well. So I just thought, this is tremendous. And that lack of any structure or, being constrained by a format that's already established, as there's lots of good shows out there. Jules Holland, there's, the KEXP, is it, I think, and but they're all constrained by their format, I think, and that people come in and they have to bend to that, whereas it feels like potentially on the internet, and I guess we're providing a format with the Infinity Session, but it feels like people can kind of be themselves and do whatever they want. We're just there to put it out there,
Yeah, it has the sense of being a very blank canvas,
yeah.
more so than is typical. And I guess that's what I'm kind of keen to explore with you today, because I remember when the internet arrived and there were people like Lawrence Lessig and this idea of kind of free culture, and there was this sense of if you can strip the gatekeepers away and you can have a very pure connection between creatives and people who want to kind of absorb them, and that there was a whole kind of utopian world that was going to come and out of that. And then sitting here in 2025, I don't feel like that promise was realized, and which is why, in part, it's so beautiful seeing you continuing to fight that fight. Do you, when you think about that sort of, the kind of successive waves of, I guess, the iPhone and social media and these various things that have kind of been inflection points in terms of the relationship between people and the internet, do you still hold true to that idea, or do you think that we have lost something along the way?
Well, it's hard to keep track. I really haven't. I've abandoned all of my social media in recent years. I was doing Twitter for a while. You're
an exceptional tweeter, like massively weird.
Well, it was fun for a while, and I enjoyed it when it felt like you were able to be subversive and have fun and actually send things up. And then I got two things happened. I got really to the point where I felt like, I haven't tweeted today, I better tweet. People, and also when anybody died or anybody had the major event, you felt like you had to comment on it and be part of the conversation.
It became a job.
Yeah, it became, but then the Christchurch thing happened for me with the dreadful massacre that happened live on internet, and it just put a shudder through my whole system, and I went, I just don't want to be on. I don't want to be in there. I just want to be, and there's so much reaction and conversation that went with that as well. I was even asked about why I went off all my social media, and the Guardian wanted me to write something about it because it was in the aftermath of that awful event. And I went, no, because then I'm just doing what I'm trying to avoid, which is commenting. There's so much commentary out there. I think that's just a flood, and I think that's part of the reason that the internet is muddied. The waters are muddied, and what good things there are in it are not coming up on people's Twitter feeds every day because there's so much other stuff. And that's the big conundrum of what we're doing with this idea as well. We're doing a program before we have any idea of how to really market it to anybody or, be part of some big global system. So I have this little bit of faith that if you keep doing good work, eventually it finds its way. But it's sort of contradictory in some ways, thinking that you can take on the internet in a pure sense and have it actually find an audience. I don't know if it can.
Well, that's sort of what I like about it is it both it clearly deserves and wants an audience in some ways, but it doesn't want it on any terms. The fact that the Infinity sessions are blink and you'll miss them, and there's a replay, but if you want to see the whole thing, you've got to kind of approach it on a particular set of terms. That's contra the general rules of just try and be everywhere and accessible to everyone all at all times. And that sort of obstinacy or perversity seems like it's in there at the same time. When you think about like a platform like YouTube, using it for distribution, but not necessarily in the way that it wants to be used, what's the motive there?
Well, I'd prefer not to be using YouTube if I had a good alternative, but YouTube offer kind of universal access to this idea. It's a hotbed of awful things, like all of the formats. So I don't know if I don't want to buy into the. Well, actually, I don't really have an opinion about YouTube. It's just there, and it's going out on there because we're not aligned. We've got no sponsors. We have partners, including yourselves, who are interested in the idea and want to be part of it, but there's no sponsors. And we've had the opportunity to have, companies come in and brand the thing, and I've resisted that to the point where it's ended up being quite expensive, and we've spent a bit of money trying to do it. There's perversity there. It'd be easier with a sponsor to pay for it, but I'm really suspicious of having anything aligned. I mean, years ago I tried to get them to in my own stumbling a long way, tried to get the government interested in a youth radio network, which would be alongside Radio New Zealand. And I'm not a good lobbyist, and it sort of failed, that whole thing, but I spent quite a few years, and it was for that same reason, because I think non-aligned media is a big absence in this country and in lots of countries now. And in terms of, there's something that it may be occasionally boring, but the Radio New Zealand is something beautiful about the fact you can tune into something and it's not aligned. There's no lobby group pressing their agenda on it. And in media, I think that's like rare and super important.
Thinking about, it's interesting. I might just take that moment because this was the mid-2000s, right? I've been thinking recently about the debut of Kiwi FM, which was what effectively replaced Channel Z, and it was essentially commercial radio trying to it felt like do an end run around the threat of a youth radio network.
Exactly that, yeah.
And almost doing something that, superficially well-intentioned, but also designed to fail, because people like New Zealand music is not a genre, or like it.
Yeah.
How did you feel at the end of that campaign that was the result?
Well, I'm sort of really frustrated. I thought Kiwi FM was a bit of a doomed enterprise from the beginning, and whether or not they would have been talking openly about it being doomed to fail, they must have known it was going to fail.
Well, I feel like the owners did, but the politicians were sold this dream, and because they just weren't particularly close to culture.
Well, it was an easy way out for the politicians, because they got to satisfy that kind of desire for young people to have their own. It was never really, the whole thing was never about, for me, getting a radio network for young people. It was about providing a space for exciting things to happen that were in all aspects of the culture, not just Kiwi music. And I wasn't a really great believer in Kiwi quotas or any of that. I don't think Kiwi music needs to be marginalised ever or put into a category, or, I don't see the point of Kiwi Music Month particularly. It just sort of makes people go, oh, okay, I'm going to have to listen to I don't know, it puts people in a perverse state of mind, I think, about it. I don't think it helps anyway, but...
Well, it implies
Kiwi
that you can, the other 11 months you can kind of relax. You've got it covered.
Yeah, that's right. I just think it's counterproductive. I think Kiwi FM was counterproductive as well, and I think it was, the people that ran that station were doing it to fend off the government any danger of what they thought was going to be a threat to their livelihood, having a commercial station for young people. It was so dangerous. Anyway, I failed at that because I was a bad lobbyist, and I think the reason I failed was because I was too emotional about it, and I got really upset about it. I think you can't be emotional if you're going to lobby the government, and you've just got to get down and get the gains when you see them. And but I I decided after that I wasn't going to ever try and lobby governments for anything, and I'll just try and do stuff. We have this lovely space, music space, Roundhead, with 2 beautiful studios, and all that happens in there is music. It's really inspiring. Well, like some days there's, the bang crash of heavy metal in it. Maybe I'm not hugely inspired by that personally, but it's still amazing to have every day be music going on in this building. I just sort of it just feels independent and truly worthy, and it's good things being done in there every day. And I sort of loved the idea of it being able to spread a little bit into the internet and find whatever, souls who need a little bit of maybe comfort and inspiration, and that's all we can do is put something good in the world.
I mean, that actually circles back quite nicely to something which I feel like is a thread that's run through probably your whole career, but particularly the sort of internet part or era part, which is of creating spaces which allow for a kind of community to happen. And I think there are a lot of big artists who've got almost like a castle on the hill and things go very well for them, and I'm sure they're not indifferent to the sort of welfare of a broader group of people, but the fact that from Seven Worlds Collide to the fact of Roundhead itself, to the Infinity Sessions and now MUFGAL, there's always the sense of, can we get more people in here at different scales and different career stages and put them in a room and sort of see what happens? And there seems like there's a real generosity to that and an idealism that's in it that feels kind of incongruous with this current era to me.
Well, that's very nice. It's a nice sentiment you're expressing there, and I think that I can say yes to some of that for sure. I don't know that. Yeah, I just think it's trying to break out of settling down. I'm trying not to settle down too much, and it's in my blood. And I was in bands for years and years, and I've toured with, played music everywhere, and I've enjoyed the feeling of an audience singing my words back to me and songs back to me. And I just think within that there's some kind of mystery that unfolds as well. As if that can happen, then maybe something even better can happen. It's just a searching, I suppose, for. And that connection between people that music can create. I had an experience the other day with my mother-in-law, who's got dementia and, really quite, distant in some ways from knowing family and all that. But I went and played some songs with her, and she sang every single word of Let It Be, the chorus of Let It Be with me, and then other songs that I'd written as well. And we just had a really good time. And I just thought, God, music is. We have to, if we can do it, then in a way it's only makes sense to try and do it in an expressive and reach as many people as you can. And it's not necessarily getting hits. That's a whole mystery in itself, but it's all about just trying to explore and find possibilities. Yeah.
I want to kind of talk about some of the places that sort of host and are integral to music now, and then talk about some of the things that you've built on your own, because they seem like the contrast between them is quite interesting. What's your view of Spotify? It's been something that has been divisive from the first, and it's a complex subject. I'm curious about your general view of it as a company.
I'm not on Spotify, and it's a slight perversity, but it's not really that I had it wasn't an act of resistance particularly. I just don't.
You mean as a user?
I don't use it. I don't use Spotify, so I don't know. I know it's extremely useful for checking out stuff. I really object to ever having an algorithm decide what I might want to like. I had that happen when I signed up to Apple Music, and they get this whole little window opens up with all the things that you probably like, and there was at least 3 of them on there I really don't like. So no.
You don't know me?
You don't know me. That's the whole thing. But I know that they do probably know me, and they'd probably give me things that I'd quite like as well. But I prefer reading about something and then go and check it out or something. There's a little natural thing I got used to. So I don't really like Spotify from a personal point of view. I think that it's a pretty it hasn't been very beneficial to musicians, and I think that record companies are doing rather nicely out of it now, which is the established order, really, and the way that the whole world is organised is that the established order usually wins every transaction, and the established order has won that transaction, and musicians are just struggling, and they're fighting with AI now, and it's going to happen more and more. That's the really worrisome thing. I go to restaurants that I'm absolutely sure they're playing AI music. There's just always something slightly wrong. It totally ticks all the boxes, but it's just slightly wrong. And and that's just bound to happen more and more. People are going to see that as a guaranteed income source, and Spotify themselves, I think, are generating some of that as well. So yeah, I'm not a fan of that model. Somebody else will come up with something better eventually. Maybe not. And then the record companies will buy it, or Live Nation will, and it'll be, again, taken up by the established order.
The JC Billboard Network delivers quality reach via commanding sites to ensure your campaign is visible and impactful. With superior screen quality and premium locations, JC can help your campaign be seen and be remembered. Visit www.beseenberemembered.co.nz to learn more. So let's talk about Live Nation, because they're a company that you both work with, and it sort of seems to be, it's pretty hard to avoid it, especially once you're at the scale you're at.
Sure. But
again, it feels like a devil for people at best. What's your view of that sort of increasing kind of vertical integration of the live music sphere into one in particular, very big company?
We use Live Nation as promoters, mostly because the people that we've worked with traditionally now are Live Nation promoters. They weren't always, but that's happened in Australia and elsewhere. So I don't have, and they've done a good job for us. It hasn't been a problem for me personally, but what's concerning about it is any monopoly, I suppose, that comes along and dominates the industry. There's always a maverick, a desire to think that maverick operators can succeed. In New Zealand, there's people like Blink who just one of those quintessential enthusiasts who did something against the grain. It worked out, and I don't know if he's doing anything currently, but I hope he is, and I hope people like him are not crushed by the big machine out there. They have a role, and they control most of the venues, and I'm sort of ambivalent about whether they're the real enemy or not. That's part of modern life, and what we have to figure out now is how to resist and where to resist, and how not to waste your energy on things that are, where to put attention to. Which is why I keep coming back to music and going, well, the only, with so much going wrong in the world, the only thing I sort of think can maybe help, and even it's a few people that come up and tell you that a song was useful to them in a moment where they needed it, and you go, well, that's, at least if I do that well, then there's a chance that it's putting something good into the world, and the butterfly effect might mean it has an impact.
So, in terms of the flip side of that, there's these big machines, and then there's the things that you make yourself with your own or kind of will into being. Fang Radio is something that kind of fits in that latter box. Do you tell me about what that is and what its function is for you?
Well, Fang Radio came about, I was called Fang at school. It was my nickname, well, one of them, and my brother was before me. It came out of Sacred Heart, actually. The ang syllable was put on the end of everybody's name. So Mike Chun was Chang, Tim was Fang. There was a guy called Paul Fitzgerald who was Fitzstang. Anyway, it stuck for me, and it was during the lockdown, and I was in LA, and I just thought, I've got to be able to do something to communicate or to have something to do. And so I just opened the lid of my computer one day, and I got sent a format by Jeremy, who runs the fan site, Mixler it was, and it was enabled me to sing, play, talk, and also play music at the same time, program, and I went, oh, that'll do. And I started playing and just did them every day for fun. And it developed into a thing where I tried to keep it up every day. And I did for about, I guess it was a year and a half or something. Through all that period, got a nice audience, and they were able to communicate with each other. There was a chat room, and they became quite a strong community, to the extent that I do shows now and people hold up they decided to call themselves mother fangers. The people that listened, it wasn't my choice. But then they turn up at shows and they hold up those signs now. So it was a nice little community. It was really good at the time because it kept me engaged. And they became more elaborate. Liam and Elroy were living down the road, and we did little 3-piece band ones from Liam's studio that were quite well produced and, fun.
I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned Liam and he's got his Hyperverse and has been streaming on Twitch. Yeah. It almost feels like there's, within the family, like generationally now, there's this curiosity about technology and what it should enable that is also on some level suspicious of or resistant to what it wants you to be. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
I have done plenty of the traditional media outlets and podcasts, and they all, I understand that it's part of getting the word out about a new record, and they're important, and some of them are really memorable because there actually is a good conversation in the midst of it, but there's a lot of stuff that feels like it's just, somehow not very satisfying. So doing things on your own is, as long as the technical side of it goes okay. I'm not the best sometimes at navigating the technical side of things. I get into a panic with that, but just being able to be completely you to them is a beautiful feeling, and it does run against the grain of the way there's so many. It used to be there was. I'm rabbiting a little bit here.
No, this is exactly
and I'm repeating
what I
myself a bit too. It used to be that you'd go to a radio station and do an interview, and then you'd have, you'd wait till the end of the week and you'd find out if you had any radio play, and it was simple. It was a simple setup. It was deeply corrupt, It was
good honest corruption.
There was a good old-fashioned corruption about it. Yeah, it was payola going on and all sorts of dodgy people, and it was by no means perfect. And the thing about nowadays is that there's just so much. So many layers of communication that you either engage with or don't choose to, and so many gatekeepers, and the net result of that, some good things happen with that. There's people who are just operate on some level you're not even aware of, and all of a sudden they're filling Spark Arena, and they've just come out of nowhere, and on some occasions they're really good, and it's mysterious because you haven't heard them or seen them in any format that you've been watching. So there's this what's the word? It's compartmentalizing what the internet has created as a compartmentalized, heavily curated spaces where people are getting exactly what they want, but they're not really aware of the rest of the world. And just the whole thing of it's symbolized by people walking around in the street with their phones like that, and they're surrounded by 360 degrees of potentially amazing things, and they're engaging with the world in this little box, and that's the world that they're getting. That's the feed they're getting, and it just seems like it's a narrowing rather than an expansive thing. It's become a narrowing thing.
Yeah, I agree. And also, that I feel like if you look back across musical history, the owners of that, like record labels, have got quite a good thing because huge chunks of it are effectively under their financial control. But when I look forward and imagine being an artist starting out now in a world that is that fragmented and where everyone is coming from some kind of a cold start, and it just seems like a near impossible, exhausting time just to even imagine how you take that first step. do you have much to do with kind of younger artists, and how do you sort of view the relationship between the Infinity Sessions and the things that you do to kind of wrap your arms around the community here with those kind of generations that are kind of trying to figure it out more recently?
I'm interested in young artists coming through, and there's always some. It's a beautiful thing to find an artist in full flight early in their, and they're just moving with absolute agility and sparking, and you see the ideas flowing and you see the energy. A lot of that is being directed now and into creating social media for themselves and trying to generate all that aspect of it. And some people are really good at it and they become really attuned, and it's a part of the reason they become successful. It's a composite of talents. It's not being just a musician or just a songwriter in itself is enormously tough. It probably always was, but I think more so than ever. But if you've got the composite skills of being able to be a communicator or, being able to make content and all that, it works for you. But what it appears to me to do is to sort of direct people's creative energies into areas which are potentially problematic and, slightly corrupting, if I could say so, in terms of what their efforts are. They judged by likes and judged by streams and judged by status. And a little bit of that comes naturally with the world of celebrity, which we've all known coming through the 60s and 70s. Celebrity was a huge part of it. And it seems now that the work maybe is not as good in some cases, and people don't flourish beyond their first or second album where they were really doing things on a... but I don't say that as a person in my advancing years who looks back and goes, it was better in my day. I don't think it was. I think that was sowing the seeds for what's happening now, But I do think it's a shame. And I'm trying to help a few young people that I sense have an opportunity to develop. In a small country like New Zealand, there's a lot of geographical problems that for young artists, they don't get to play enough in front of live audiences. If you are in a van in Europe for 2 months playing really shitty little clubs every night, you're going to get much better and you're just going to learn how to do it. And people don't get that opportunity here, so they sort of languish at certain periods and they can go overseas, and that's sometimes a really good idea for people, but it's I think that's one of the biggest problems that people have. And then they get focused in on sort of filling in New Zealand On Air forms and trying to get funding and, and I don't begrudge anybody that either, and I think studio probably benefits from a few New Zealand On Air funds as well, but so I'm not knocking it, but I sometimes think that people's attention's being drawn to the wrong places and at points where they might be able to make exponential leaps in their creativity and their ability. And it sometimes happens in big cities in the UK where you suddenly find yourself connected with extraordinary people because the network is there. So we don't have that as reliably in New Zealand. I think there's amazing parts of it here, but there's gaps in the infrastructure for musicians.
Well, that feels like what MUFGAL and Roundhead and the Infinity Sessions, all of that is seeking to fill in some of those gaps. So,
well, I hope so. I don't think we can do it all, and by all means, it's sort of a stumbling along as I usually do. But I don't know. I'm not the marketer. That's really always been quite confusing for me. That area, I can talk, represent myself, and have a pretty good idea of imaging now and how to not get it right, how to get it right, how to not get it wrong, Yeah.
I think you put together something pretty amazing and very much
great.
It's met the kind of, like you said, it did feel like we were languishing, and maybe this is where it'll turn around.
Well, God, that'd be a lovely thought. It's a small effort, but I do think I have big expectations for it. I want it to be amazing, and I'm really trying to make sure that my set, because I've got a set to do in there, I'm really pondering how to do something. Every time I'm playing at the moment, I'm really trying to make it special in some way that hasn't, that requires quite a lot of effort and, yeah, it's just challenging myself, I suppose. But we'll see.
Well, you're alongside a pretty special lineup, and hopefully there is a slightly competitive thing that comes out. Everyone wants to leave it all on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for everyone to do something special, and in a small, controlled space with an enthusiastic but small audience, it'll feel like playing a party. One of the best things that you do, for me anyway, ever. The beginning of Crowded House was us playing parties as a 3-piece busking trio, and I really fell in love with that feeling of having the room just really, buzzing, and you can see them all, and they're part of it, and all that stuff. So this intimate atmosphere hopefully will create some of that.
I can't imagine that you'll have any problem with that. Thanks so much for coming on The Fold, Neil. This has been fantastic.
Thanks, Duncan. Yeah.
Seeing is not enough. With optimized data tools and insights, the JC Billboard Network helps brands be remembered. Dedicated to closing the loop between impression and action, JC can help your campaign be seen and be remembered. Visit www.beseenberemembered.co.nz to learn more.